Hi, I'm Kevin Dunn, the Get Fit Guy, and I'm here to share my accumulated decade of knowledge in the strength and conditioning industry with you to help you to become the best version of yourself. Recently, I've been spending a significant portion of my time working with a gymnastics coach. The reason for this is that I have a goal to improve my balance and coordination with things like the gymnastic beam, but also to develop some cool tricks like a back somersault. I'm getting close on a somersault, but it didn't start that way. So how did it start, and how can we work towards complex skills? If you've been following my episodes, right at the beginning I defined the meaning of a coach, that it's a safe and efficient journey from a point of origin to a defined end goal. In the case of a back somersault, first of all I had to demonstrate that I could jump high enough, that I could make the required shape as I jumped, and that I could transition from one shape to another in midair. Only once I could do all of those things with the safety of giant crash mats was I permitted to progress to flipping into a giant foam-filled pit. I could definitely have started just jumping backwards into the pit, but it's unlikely that I would have made meaningful long-term progress because I'd be developing potential bad habits. Every time we move our body, it's the result of a signal from our brain traveling to motor units that control muscle contractions. Move our joints. There's no other way to move intentionally. The more complex or explosive the contraction, the more training has to go into learning the sequence in which things have to move. So, as a trainee, we have to be able to look at the task, assess the type of contraction required, and make sure that all the physical steps below that contraction are in place. This would be a contraction hierarchy. Most time should be spent at the very base of the hierarchy. However, this is typically where most trainees spend the least time. This is because sometimes there's a disconnect with how these steps build to a full physical picture, but also because simple tasks can be boring and people can be impatient. This base layer of the hierarchy is called motor control. It involves training slow or even static contractions which develop the patterns needed to perform the advanced movements. So let's take the back somersault as an example. It starts with a jump. This jump involves a dip, which is a squat pattern, and then a triple extension. This is where your ankles, knees, and hips fully extend, creating a shape called a hollow, which involves core strength. Finally, there's a tuck, where you bring your knees to your chest, which is another squat, before you land and then absorb that impact with the legs. So we can break all these movements down into 6 essential patterns. There's core, squat, lunge, push, pull, and bend. When you look at the movements, you now be able to see where you might be lacking in an essential ingredient. Every one of these patterns has a way to develop them with both simple and complex exercises. For example, the core. You could start with dead bugs, sit-ups and hollow holds, maybe side plank as more simple options. And more advanced options would be gymnastic movements like the planche or the front or back lever. In the squat, we can run all the way from the air squat and the wall sit, right up to advanced options like overhead squats, sissy squats, and kang squats. In the lunge, we can progress all the way from simple lunges on the spot or step ups onto a box, right up to single leg pistol squats. Pushing, we can have simple variations like an assisted pull-up, and running all the way up to things like bench pressing with chains or handstand push-ups. In the pull pattern, we've got ring rows or bent over rows, maybe banded face pulls, and that gives way to more complex options like muscle-ups, either on rings or on the horizontal bar. In a bend pattern, we've got simple options like a kettlebell Romanian deadlift, maybe a trap bar deadlift, progressing all the way up to really heavy deadlifts or things like power snatches. We know that developing any skill is essentially the long-term application of ever-increasing external stress. These stresses must always be above a minimum dose to be effective. So we have to work on increasing complexity or load week on week. We always have to be below the maximum tolerated dose. So that's not so much that we can't recover and add load or complexity the next time round. Your muscles or your physiology, even your neurology adapting to this stress is simply the accumulation of physical experiences. So my advice for anyone who has a long-term goal, no matter how far away it seems, is to treat it like any other goal. Split the journey down into small steps. Reverse engineer the process and help you figure out where you are now and what components and what parts of the task you're missing. Then work on the component parts, developing the motor control required. Enjoy the process and don't be frustrated that you might still be far from the end point. You've got to take enjoyment in the mastery of each step. As I said last week, practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. So the better you become at each piece of the overall puzzle, the better you will be at the final product when the time comes. What are you working on right now? Do you have any skills that you're developing? And how are you splitting them up as a plan of attack? If you have anything you're working on, I'd love to hear from you. Get Fit Guy is a Quick and Dirty Tips podcast. Thanks to the team at Quick and Dirty Tips, Adam Cecil, Morgan Christensen, Holly Hutchings, Davina Tomlin, and our intern is Camlin Lacey. I'm your host, Kevin Dunn. If you have a question for me, leave me a voicemail at 510-353-3104 or send me an email at getfitguy@quickanddirtytips.com. For information about the show, visit quickanddirtytips.com or check out the show notes in your podcast app.